Welcome along to Rabbit and Snail's Film Talk, and I'm delighted to say we're joined yet again by the wonderful Mark Priest as we continue our compilation of the 100 greatest films ever made, or at least the 100 greatest films in our humble opinion. And Mark, welcome to the show, and what's the film you're going to add to our list this week?
Well, I'm very excited to talk about this film, Richard. This is top 100. This is probably in my top 10.
Okay.
I'm sure it would be for a lot of other people.
Wow.
The film is 1975. It's Stephen Spielberg as director, and of course it is Jaws. Absolutely fantastic film, and I think some of my family are sick and tired of watching this film over the years, because I've watched it so many times and still love it, and I only watched it just a couple of days ago again. And there's so many wonderful, wonderful scenes in this film. It's really is brilliant, really brilliant.
But as you said on a previous episode, we've always thought what we might do is our 100 greatest films are those we could watch over and over again. Our own classics. Yes. And Jaws is absolutely one of those movies. It never seems to date.
No, and I think it's down to the quality of the sort of the production. The acting is fantastic, and of course, the director Stephen Spielberg, a hero of mine, sure of yours.
Absolutely.
He's done so much, hasn't he? And I do believe that some of his earlier work was probably some of his very, very best. Jaws is right up there, I think, as just a terrific film. Great story as well, and of course, one thing more than anything is the music. John Williams' music is what really does. It sets the scene. It's often such an iconic film, and of course the shark itself. That music,
and a non-CGI shark. That's the interesting thing.
Yes, exactly.
Like a rubber mechanical thing that really didn't work most of the time.
That's right. Yes, it's amazing that they managed to do as much as they did. And from memory, I think they booked, was it 60 days for sort of filming, and it turned out to be something like 105 days. God. Nearly double, and that was predominantly down to the fact that the shark wouldn't work properly.
That's right.
And I've since read that actually there was very little footage actually not used, because they had to use every single bit they could just to make it look half, reasonable. And
a lot of the filming out at sea. Yeah. They thought, let's get the camera on a level platform so that it's steady all the time.
That's right.
And the cameraman said, "You joking? It's going to make everybody feel seasick as the boats are moving around." Yeah. So most of it out at sea was filmed handheld.
Yeah, absolutely, and interestingly, it was apparently one of the first times, or maybe the last time, that actually filmed at a proper sea in the Atlantic Ocean. Normally, it's a lake in the back lot in LA somewhere. But no, Steven Spielberg said no, it had to be at sea. So they really were up against it.
In Martha's Vineyard, I think.
That's correct, yes, yeah. I think they did some of the interior shots were done back in LA, but the majority of it was filmed in Martha's Vineyard.
So for the 2 or 3 people watching who may not know the story of Jaws, a précis of what's the plot, what's the story?
Well, as you may recall, of course, it starts off with that young girl, college student, decides to go skinny dipping, and she's with a boyfriend. They've probably both been drinking, but she ends up going for a swim late at night. Fantastic scene. Just picture it now. With the stars and the sea, it's absolutely glorious. And she wants him to come in the water, but he's collapsed on the beach. She's swimming along, and of course that's when we're first experiencing the music, and you get that music,
that theme.
So that something fearsome's coming along, but of course you don't even see the shark, do you, for some time in the movie.
It's probably because it didn't work.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, it's going to eat her. And it's a terrifying scene. I do remember seeing this for the very first time myself in the cinema and thinking, crikey, this is pretty scary stuff. So then unfortunately, she's obviously killed by the shark, and it cuts to the next day, and you're introduced to Brody, Roy Scheider, who's the sheriff in Amity, He's then notified the next day of a missing girl, and they eventually find her on a beach, half eaten, takes her to the local coroner, who initially says, "Oh, this is definitely a shark attack." So at that point, Brody decides he's going to close the beaches straight away. The mayor, who finds out about this, is completely dismayed, can't believe it because it's obviously going to affect the tourism. So he goes and sees Brody along with the coroner again, and now the coroner changes his mind and decides it might just be a boat accident.
Okay.
So they decide that they won't close the beaches and they're just going to put more people on to watch the beaches. So Brody's becoming more of a character in the film. He played so fantastically by Roy Scheider, I have to say.
Great part.
It's a great part for him, actually. Really good. Interesting, Charlton Heston was actually offered the part.
Is that right?
Yeah. You can't quite imagine that, can you? No.
The thing is, you can think other people were offered these parts, and I mean, I'm sure others were offered different parts too. But that cast, you couldn't imagine anybody else doing it.
No, I think Stephen Spielberg was right. So he wanted people that were well known, but not ultimately stars in their own right.
Yeah.
And so, as it goes, Charlton Heston turned that down, but nevertheless, Roy Scheider, even Spielberg wasn't quite sure he'd be right because he'd just come out of the French Connection. So he's quite well known anyway, but he does play the part fantastically well. So he moves along the film at some pace, and of course there's another shark attack. A great bit of cinematography in this, where Roy Schneider's on the beach, they've got lookouts, and unfortunately a young boy that's swimming, and the music starts again, and he's dragged under and obviously killed. But there's a great camera shot. It comes from a long shot into Roy Scheider, and it's a terrific part of the film, and it makes you go cold.
Is that realization that something awful has happened?
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, at that point, the mayor again is putting in under more pressure to close the beaches, and this is when there's a meeting in the local mayor's office of the locals, mostly businessmen, and of course this is where you first meet Robert Shaw as Quint.
Oh wow, what a great actor!
Absolute fantastic actor in his own right, brilliant, and a great character actor, and was fantastic in this part, really good. And he obviously tells them that we've got a bad shark on their hands. This is not a barracuda. This is a bad shark. And he killed the shark for them, but he wants $10,000. And obviously they're dismayed and not really interested, and he walks off. And they decide they're just going to put more sentries on the beaches, and it's not a good thing, really.
It's not enough.
Not a good thing. And of course, then the shark comes back. And you end up, in fact, actually, Brody's children are in the sort of local estuary where the shark is actually coming down the estuary, and it's very likely these children are going to get attacked. But there's a chap in a little dinghy. Do you recall that?
I do, yes.
And his dinghy gets thrown up.
He gets in the way.
Yeah.
And then the kid's saved.
That's right, the kids are saved, but there's a horrific moment where this leg comes down. Oh, gosh, it's quite scary.
And of course, Dreyfus.
Richard Dreyfus he's been called down as a specialist, and he's telling the mayor as well that you haven't just got a shark, you've got a really big shark here. So after this has happened, you're going to have to do something about it. So they eventually agree to hire Quint, and there's some great scenes where Quint doesn't want Richard Dreyfus or Roy Scheider to be part of it, and they insist that they're going to have to go on his boat, the Orca. And so they set off, and there's some really good interactions. Quite interestingly, Richard Dreyfus and Robert Shaw in real life just didn't get on together, and there really was some clashes.
Nor in the film, to be fair. So
no, exactly, and that comes to, you can see that, you can feel that tension, can't you? And I'd reckon that Robert Shaw was doing that on purpose because he was trying to antagonise it to get that bit of acting really perfect. So eventually they're out at sea and they're now searching for the shark. In fact, they actually do manage to actually shoot the shark with these barrels. And even Robert Shaw can't believe that eventually at one point there's 3 barrels on this shark and it still manages to go down. And he's never seen anything like that before. And then we come to the most probably iconic scene, I think, in the movie.
Yes.
And probably one of the most iconic scenes in movies, full stop, which is where they talk about the USS Indianapolis. And
which is a true story.
exactly. And interestingly, it had only just been released to America a few months before this movie came out, about actually what happened, about the USS Indianapolis taking the nuclear bomb that was going to bomb Japan. And of course, the 700 odd men that perished through being blown up initially or lost to sharks. And so it's a very poignant part of the movie, and it still sends a shiver down my spine every time I watch it.
Ooh.
It's not just it's Robert Shaw is terrific in it, and there's an interesting sideline story to this. Apparently, he was very drunk, Robert Shaw, on the first day of filming, and they actually had to carry him onto the set. And you can kind of see that in part of the film where it sort of cuts between the sort of, when they're trying to make a joke on things and showing each other their wounds and stuff. But when it comes to actually delivering the speech about the Indianapolis, Robert Shaw nails it. He delivers it spine-chillingly. And he wrote a lot of that himself, actually. There was an original script that he felt it was too big and too long, and he just couldn't do anything with it. So he rewrote that, and that's what he ended up delivering himself in that part of the movie. It's a really fantastic part.
Great bit of writing and a tremendous bit of acting. I mean, it has to be
Absolutely.
said, it's a
Yes.
huge scene within the movie.
And of course, he delivers that scene. They then they start having a sing-song. And of course, that's when they first hear the shark slamming into the side of the boat. And that's when it really starts to turn around the film. Because obviously it's them against the shark. Which sees, in the end, the boat being destroyed. Robert Shaw gets killed. Eaten, actually, by the shark,
By the shark, yes.
And Richard Dreyfus, who's tried to sort of put on his scuba gear to actually try and kill the shark himself, but that doesn't work out. So it ends up with Roy Scheider. As the boat is literally just about to sink, he's actually up on the top of the mast with his rifle. And fortunately, in the good movies they always, just fortunately,
Just in time.
the shark is eating an oxygen tank or something like that, and Schneider manages to shoot that tank and it blows the shark to pieces. Great finish to the film. Really exciting stuff. Love it.
I mean, it is just such a powerful film. And there's been lots of making of documentaries which are thoroughly fascinating.
Absolutely.
Too.
Well worth watching.
But it then spawned
Yeah.
other baby sharks or bigger sharks. I'm not sure can't clearly be the same shark,
Yes.
but even
Well,
Roy Schneider was in, I think.
Jaws 2, and that's actually a pretty good film. Actually, it's not there with the Jaws, but it's actually a pretty good film. What we don't talk about is Jaws 3 and Jaws 4.
Michael Caine was in Jaws 4, wasn't he?
Yeah. So it's not it's not one of the best, but hey.
As we've mentioned many times before, that great movies come along, they are absolutely fantastic, but they don't always have a good sequel.
Well, no, but I think what Jaws has done, and even to this day, I know a lot of people will be still, when they go into that sea, especially if they're on holiday.
I think, that
Just
little
wonder.
fin coming through the water.
And it's down to that film that did that.
And that great bit at da-na.
Yes.
Just those two notes, or whatever, however many.
I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, with a rusty cough. Get away with it. But it's just iconic, isn't it?
It is.
All the way
Absolutely. This is in my top 10.
Mine too, I would have to say. I mean, it is, without a doubt, an absolutely stunning film.
Yep.
And you have the Steelcase box set.
Yes.
Wow.
You have to for this one.
It's just amazing. Look at that.
Yeah.
That is absolutely terrific. Whoa.
You have to have a code to get into that one.
Yes. Great film.
Yep.
Great contribution to our top 100.
Thank you.
Jaws, it's got to be on our list of 100 of the greatest films ever made, without a doubt. Mark, thank you for that contribution. If you agree with us, leave a comment down below. If you don't agree with us, leave a comment down below. Either way, do subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching Film Talk. Mark, thank you for bringing us Jaws.
Thank you, Richard.